What if the very thing people told you would protect your future was actually keeping you stuck your whole life? Sounds crazy, right? But honestly, that's exactly what happened to two childhood friends from a tiny village in India. And the scary part is, most people still make the same mistake today, without even realizing it. Welcome back to Lessons for Life Tales. Today's story is simple, but it hits deep. Because this isn't really just about money. It's about fear, comfort, and the difference between playing it safe and actually building a life. Romesh and Kishan grew up together. Same dusty roads, same poor families, same struggles. Their fathers worked long, exhausting days just to put food on the table. And when both fathers passed down the same small inheritance to their sons, everyone thought their futures would probably look the same too. But they didn't. Not even close. One man spent years saving every dollar he could. The other took a risk with almost everything he had. Years later, one was barely surviving, while the other had built a life nobody in the village thought was possible. And what caused that difference might completely change the way you look at money forever. Back then, life in the village was simple. Nobody had much. Most families worked from sunrise to sunset just to get by. Romesh and Kishan grew up in that kind of world. Small homes, dusty roads, long hot days in the fields beside their fathers. They wore old clothes, ate simple meals, and learned early that money was hard to earn. When their fathers got older, both young men received the same thing, 5,000 rupees. It wasn't a fortune, but for families like theirs, it meant everything. Romesh still remembered his father holding that money in his rough, worn hands and saying, "Protect this. Save every coin you can. The world is hard, and one day you'll need it." And honestly, Romesh believed every word. But Kishan's father saw money differently. He told his son something that stayed with him forever. He said, "Money is like water. If it never moves, it starts to rot. But if it flows, it can feed an entire field." Kishan didn't fully understand it at first, but he trusted his father deeply. And that's really where everything changed. Same village, same struggles, same amount of money. But two completely different beliefs about what money was actually supposed to do. Romesh didn't waste a second after getting the money. He wrapped the entire 5,000 rupees in an old cloth, lifted the wooden floor inside his tiny house, and buried it underneath like it was treasure. To him, that money meant safety. Every extra coin he earned working in the fields went straight into that hidden bundle. He felt proud watching it slowly grow. But Kishan did something that honestly sounded crazy to everyone around him. He bought a cow. The whole village talked about it. Even Romesh laughed at him. He told him, "What happens if the cow gets sick or dies? You should have protected the money instead of risking it." But Kishan saw it differently. Every morning before sunrise, while most people were still asleep, he was already outside feeding the cow, cleaning the stall, and carrying fresh milk into the village to sell. It wasn't easy. Some days he came home exhausted. Some days he barely made enough. But little by little, things started changing. A few months later, the cow gave birth to a calf. Then another came later. Slowly, without anyone really noticing at first, Kishan's small decisions started turning into something bigger. Meanwhile, Romesh's money stayed exactly where he left it. Hidden underground. Safe, but completely still. And that's when the difference between the two men quietly began growing wider every single year. Years went by faster than either of them expected. Romesh kept doing the same thing every single year. Work hard. Spend as little as possible. Hide more money under the floor. And honestly, seeing those savings grow gave him comfort. It made him feel secure. By the time 10 years had passed, he had saved more money than he ever imagined as a young man. But something strange was happening around him. Life kept getting more expensive. Rice, that used to cost almost nothing, suddenly cost 3 times more. Clothes became harder to afford. School fees for his kids kept rising. Even basic medicine started draining his savings faster than he expected. And for the first time, Romesh began opening that hidden bundle, not to build a future, but just to survive the present. Meanwhile, Kishan's life looked completely different. His one cow had turned into many. His small milk business slowly became a real dairy farm. He hired workers from the village, bought land, built proper shelters for the animals. People started respecting him because they could see how hard he had worked for years without giving up. But the biggest difference wasn't really the money. It was the peace on his face. Kishan no longer worried every time prices went up, because his money was still moving, still growing. While Romesh's savings sat still for years, the world around him never stopped changing. And little by little, that quiet difference started becoming impossible to ignore. One evening, right as the sun was going down, Romesh sat quietly with Kishan outside the dairy farm. The sky was glowing orange. Cows were settling down for the night, and for the first time in years, Romesh stopped pretending everything was okay. He looked around at the land, the workers, the animals, the life Kishan had built, and it hit him hard. They both started with the exact same amount of money. Same village, same struggles, same opportunities. But somehow their lives had gone in completely different directions. And honestly, you could hear the pain in his voice when he finally asked, "What did I do wrong?" Kishan didn't laugh at him. He didn't act superior. He just pointed toward a small pond near the field. The water was dark, thick, almost lifeless. Then he pointed at the river, flowing nearby. Fresh water, constant movement, full of life. And he said something Romesh would never forget. Money works the same way. If it just sits there, it slowly loses its purpose. It weakens over time. But when it moves, when it grows, it creates more life. That moment hit deeper than any financial lesson ever could. Because Romesh realized he hadn't really been protecting his future all those years. He'd been protecting his fear. And while he was busy trying not to lose money, time quietly kept moving without him. The next morning, Romesh did something he probably should have done years earlier. Instead of burying what little money he had left, he walked over to Kishan's farm and bought 2 young cows. Honestly, it scared him. He was older now. He had responsibilities, bills, children depending on him. Starting over at that stage of life felt risky and embarrassing. But deep down, he knew staying the same scared him even more. Kishan helped him in the beginning, showed him how to care for the animals, how to sell milk, how to think long-term instead of just trying to survive one more day. And little by little, things started changing. Not overnight, not magically. Some months were still hard. Some mistakes cost him money. But for the first time in years, Romesh felt like he was actually moving forward instead of standing still watching life get more expensive around him. He never became the richest man in the village, like Kishan did. But honestly, that stopped mattering after a while. What he gained was something much deeper. He stopped living in constant fear. He understood how money really worked. More importantly, he realized it's never too late to change the direction of your life. Even small steps can completely change your future when you finally stop being afraid to move. By the end of the story, Romesh finally understood something most people don't realize until much later in life. Saving money isn't wrong. In fact, saving can protect you during hard times. But protection alone doesn't build a future. Money was never meant to just sit there untouched forever. It's a tool, and tools are supposed to be used. The people who slowly build a better life usually aren't the ones hiding from risk forever. They're the ones willing to learn, adapt, fail a few times, and keep moving anyway. Sometimes the best investment isn't even money. Sometimes it's learning a new skill, starting a small business, taking care of your health, reading more, meeting the right people, betting on yourself when nobody else does. That's really what changed Kishan's life. He stopped thinking only about safety and started thinking about growth. And honestly, that lesson applies to way more than just money. If there's one thing this story reminds us, it's this. It's never too late to start again. No matter how stuck you feel right now, small decisions made consistently can completely change your future over time. If this story meant something to you, take a moment to like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe to Lessons for Life Tales for more stories that make you think a little deeper about life. And truly, thank you for spending these few minutes with us today. Wishing you peace, wisdom, success, and most importantly, good health. We'll see you again in the next story.